I am COO at Stribe, already stumbling over my words today. It is amazing to have you all here for our webinar for Talk Money Week. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about something that's often difficult to talk about, but so important, and that's money, financial well-being, and financial well-being. Today, we're diving into practical ways to help you build a confident, money-savvy culture within your team. And while we're waiting for a few more to join, because I do know that people have a few meetings kind of butting up to 12 o'clock today, I would love for you to get involved right from the start. So please use the chat, say hi, let us know your name, the organization you're tuning in from, and maybe what you hope to gain from today. Don't forget to set your chat messages to everyone so we can all connect and share insights. And I have remembered to turn the chat on before the webinar today. For your regulars here, you will remember that I forget every single time, but I remembered today, which is just lovely. I feel very accomplished. Throughout the session, we really want this to be an active discussion. So please do make the use of the chat. To help with this, we will also be putting polls live throughout the presentation. So do keep your eyes peeled for those as well. The Q&A feature is at the bottom of your screen and is a place for you to drop questions for our expert Abby. She's saying hi in the chat right now. Please go and say hi to her too. She is here today to help us explore this conversation, share tips with you to help you in your workplace become more confident about talking about financial well-being. If a question resonates with you, please do give it an upvote and we'll prioritize the most popular ones. And for anyone that is new here today, welcome. It is so lovely to have you here. As a short intro into us, Stribe are an employee engagement survey software that is built to help you create the best possible employee surveys. And we really focus on helping you reach everyone wherever they work. So for those of you from dispersed workforces, maybe you've got unnetworked or deskless employees, even those without email addresses, we help you reach all of those, helping make sure you get great response rates every single time. We work with some really amazing customers, and we're always looking to speak to new folk who are ready to step away from their Google, Microsoft, or SurveyMonkey forms. So please do get in touch if you're interested in hearing more about us. This webinar has drawn so much interest. It's clear to see there are lots of you looking for ideas that give you the confidence to support your employees' financial well-being. So let's jump in. Before I do that, I am going to put our first poll live. So please do answer that if you are able to. So I am joined today by the wonderful Abby Birch. Abby is a seasoned personal finance expert, coach and trainer, and has a unique passion for helping people feel more confident about discussing money in the workplace. We truly are in the best of hands today. Through her work with My Money Explained, Abby provides expert training, workshops, and support to organizations, empowering both leaders and employees to elevate financial literacy and create a healthier approach to financial well-being. We are so thrilled and excited to have her here today and to have her share her insights on building a confident, money-savvy workplace. Please do make the most of this hour with us. This will be the last time I say it. I know I've repeated myself, but please do not be shy with the chat or the Q&A. Make sure you get those questions in early if you have them. We'll have time for anything you need to ask us about financial well-being, employee well-being, or employee surveys after Abby's presentation. So yes, make sure you get those questions in. So without further ado, I am going to hand over to Abby to lead our presentation for today.
Oh, thanks, Lucy. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the introduction. And good morning to everybody. Thank you for joining us today. So welcome to the webinar today. Lucy's done a really great job of explaining what we're going to be doing today. But before we move forward, I just thought I'd introduce myself and give you a little bit more background about me and what I do. As Lucy said, I am a personal finance expert and I help companies support the financial health of their employees. I've got 20 plus years, I actually think it's more like 25 now, years of experience in the financial services sector. And I have, I'm both a qualified financial advisor and a qualified mortgage advisor. Throughout my career, I've worked for 2 major high street banks. I've worked up for a fintech startup company, and I've owned 2 successful businesses myself, one of which was a bed and breakfast in France, so something completely different to finance. But as Lucy touched on, I have been a financial advisor, financial coach. I've done lots of training within my career, and I am also a mental health first aider, which I'll tie that in as to why I've mentioned that throughout the presentation today. So I help companies support their employees' financial health as part of their overall wellbeing strategy, improving mental health, wellness, absenteeism and retention. And I specialise in kind of areas like navigating the cost of living, budgeting, mortgages, and training money champions or your managers or senior leadership within your organisation to have better conversations around money. So the goals for today, we've got quite a lot to get through. So first of all, we'll have a look and analyse the key takeaways from the October 2024 budget. I'm not going to go into all the details, you'll be very glad, because I think Rachel Reeves was talking for quite some considerable time. Then we'll look at understanding financial wellbeing and the impact that has on your workplaces. Then we'll look at the role that HR have in supporting financial wellbeing. And then we'll look briefly, with Lucy's help, at the role of financial wellbeing surveys in identifying what your employees need. And then we'll look at the reason why money conversations are often seen as taboo. And we'll have a look at how we can create a more open culture about money within the workplace, and have a look at some next steps to promote financial wellbeing. So I also have a poll. There's a poll here, and then there's one at the end and there's one in the middle. So how well do you understand the limitations and responsibilities of HR in relation to financial wellbeing? I'd really appreciate your insights into how you feel about this.
That is up for you now. I can see folk answering it, Abby, just in case you can't see it.
Can you share the results? Can you tell us what the results are, Lucy?
Yes. So we have 7 of 10 folk have answered so far. So we've got 43% are not very well and 57% somewhat well.
Okay, well, hopefully by the end of today, we might be able to increase how you feel about that afterwards. So thank you very much for giving us those insights. So let's move on to the budget and the key takeaways from last week's budget. So this budget sees taxes going up by a huge 40 billion pounds, and employers are bearing the majority of these rises. Now, on the plus side of that, public investment has been boosted by over 100 billion over the next 5 years, which is probably very, very welcome, but maybe not so much of the tax hikes to go with it. So really, I've split this into 2. So the impact to the employer and some key insights into how that's going to affect individuals within your organisation. And although the employer is the person who's, who's going to be bearing the brunt of the increases, is actually, there's not a great deal to report on really from an employer point of view. So national living wage is going to increase to £12.21 for anybody who's over 21. And there is a plan to equalise the national living wage over, it says over time, but it's actually expected to be by the end of this government, that everybody will be on the same national living wage. And then we've got the increase to national insurance, which I think was quite a big shock to quite a lot of employers and will have quite a big impact on their bottom line. So it's being raised by 1.2% to 15%. And there is also, coupled with that increase, there is a reduction to the starting rate. So what does this mean in practice? If we look at how these changes apply to somebody who's on an annual salary of 30,000, an employer will now pay £865.80 more than they were this tax year in the next tax year. So that's quite a considerable jump for somebody who's actually, that's 30,000 is below the average salary in the UK. So not even an average salary, it's nearly another sort of £900 a year that employers are going to have to find. However, excuse me, however, in order to try and offset that slightly for smaller businesses who are going to be impacted most about these changes, the employment allowance has increased from 10,500, has increased to 10,500 to be able to offset some of those costs. So what that means in practice is employers are allowed to allocate that against their national insurance contributions, and they don't actually pay anything until they've paid over above that. And also that used to be limited to companies who had less than 100,000 as their turnover. That has now been increased to, that has been abolished. So anybody can apply for these, which basically the Treasury are saying that 865,000 employers will pay no national insurance at all next year. And that's to try and support the small and medium companies who are going to be most hit by these national insurance contribution increases. So what they're hoping is that these measures will raise 25 billion a year by the end of the forecast period. So if you think they're hoping to raise 40 billion, and 25 billion of that is just from these national insurance increases. So that's a massive impact on employers. And there are various bodies who are warning about the impact that this could have really on growth and on job creation, because it's putting the burden on the employer. And again, I'll come back to this throughout today's webinar, just to, sort of tie it in with some of the themes that I'm talking about today. But how does it affect individuals? So it's great news, really, if you've got your national living wage increases. If you're on minimum wage, it's the equivalent to around about £1,400 a year for an eligible full-time worker, which is great from a cost of living point of view. They also announced a freeze on fuel duty extended until April 2026. So if you've got people who are struggling to afford to get to work in their cars, this is going to be a welcome announcement to them. And also, if you're in the logistics business, again, this is going to have a really big impact on your bottom line. So that is good news, that it has been extended until April 2026. Likewise, the government have also announced that they will begin increasing the income tax and national insurance thresholds from April 2028. It was thought that they might extend the freeze on those, putting more people into the paying tax, but they've said they're actually going to start increasing those from April 2028, as was already planned. There's been lots of press around the VAT on private school fees that's being introduced, and you may very well have workers who are actually worried about this. If they have got children who are at private school, it will be a big impact potentially on their fees and what they may or may not have to pay going forwards. Some other good news for people who are looking to get onto the property ladder is that they have announced that there's going to be an increase in affordable housing, lots and lots of money going into housing, but also the government will be engaging with the industry over the autumn to increase review the mortgage guarantee scheme and make it permanent. So that's been running for the last few years, and it supports lending up to 95% mortgages, but it's been a bit stop-start. So they're hoping that by reviewing it, they can introduce it permanently, and then it will give lenders the confidence that to help make it easier for first-time buyers to start their dream of purchasing a new home. So that's that's going to be in the autumn, and they're saying they're going to bring further details of that phase 2 of the spending review. So that's going to be quite, hopefully, reasonably quick. So stamp duty changes. Why am I mentioning that? We've probably all heard the headlines of the surcharge on purchasing second homes. is being increased from 3% to 5%. But one thing that hasn't been mentioned quite as much in the news, which will probably affect a number of your staff or employees or anybody really who's looking to buy a house, is that there's no change to the abolition of the current temporary thresholds on stamp duty. So what does that mean in practice? So in 2022, there was a reduction in the threshold that you pay stamp duty, and that affected anybody. It wasn't just first-time buyers. In order to try and promote the house, keep the housing market afloat after COVID. And that was due to end in 2025, and that is still going to continue. So what that actually means is, for a first-time buyer, a reduction on the stamp duty threshold from 425,000 to 300,000. That is quite a big drop, which means that they will start paying stamp duty now at 300,000. And the current threshold for all other purchases at the moment is 0% up to 250,000, but that's going to be dropping to 125,000, and a new rate, or it's not a new rate because it's the old rate, of 2% will be put back into force between 125 and 250, whereas at the moment that doesn't affect, that you don't pay any stamp duty on that part of it. So that is actually something quite big that wasn't spoken about at the budget, that is going to continue and will affect everybody who's buying a house. The other thing is pensions will be subject to IHT, and again there's been quite a lot of noise around this, but actually it's estimated it will only affect 10,000 estates, mainly because pensions between husbands and wife are not subject to inheritance tax, and the majority of people who have a pension pot will probably leave that to their husband or their wife, and therefore won't fall foul of that. And the other announcement was that IHT, the threshold for that has been frozen until 2030. So that's been extended over and above the April 2028 original date. And anybody who's got any investments that are outside of ISAs or pensions, there will be more capital gains tax to pay when you come to sell those. So what's the impact for employers? So when combined with the employment law changes announced already this year, this budget is a significant change for employers. And, people will have concerns over employing new people. There's going to be less money for pay rises and bonuses, and minimum wage sectors will be hit. So how will it affect financial well-being? Well, there's going to be higher cost to employ people, and less money, as I say, for pay rises and bonuses. And, this will have an effect on people's money in their pocket, especially if you take into consideration the high inflation that we've had over the last few years and higher interest rates as a result of that. Now, interest rates are expected to come down to about 3.5% by the end of 2025. But it is only a prediction, and the budget could affect this. And inflation has now come down to 1.7. They're expecting it to go up a little bit, but stay around about the 2% where we need it to be throughout 2025, unless there's any big anything happens that could affect that. So when Russia invaded Ukraine, that had a big impact on our inflation. So the impact for employers is there's going to be higher costs to employ people. There's going to be less money for other initiatives like wellbeing or any other initiatives that an employer offers. There's going to be possible closures and redundancies, and we need to think about how we support our employees through, if the business is closing, making people redundant, how that those kind of things can affect people's financial well-being directly. And overall, there could potentially be a reduced financial well-being within the organisation, because, as I say, if there's not as much money to be offered on pay rises or bonuses or salary or how whatever that look, discounts or benefits, then that's going to affect people's bottom line figures, and they're going to feel their financial well-being will decrease. So, what is financial well-being? Let's have a quick look at that. And why does it matter? So why does financial well-being matter? Well, according to Reba, the 4 pillars of overall well-being are physical, mental, social, and financial. And that makes sense, because our financial well-being affects all aspects of our lives. So including physical, mental, but also our sense of self-worth, the decisions that we make, the career we choose. It affects our relationships, and it also affects how we feel about money, affects our financial health. And let me just go back very quickly, unlike the other mental, social, and physical, money actually affects all 4 of those pillars. Specifically, one of the main links is between money and mental health. They're intrinsically linked, because mental health can impact the way that you deal with your money, and vice versa. Money problems can affect your mental health, and also the feelings associated with money can really affect your mental health. So if you're in a bad situation with your finances and you hear the postman walking up the drive, that can create anxiety and fear, and in some cases panic attack, because you don't know what's about to come through the door, or you already know what's coming through the door and it's worrying you. So there is a really big link between money and mental health. So let's have a look at what financial well-being is. It is a term that means different things to different people, but I really like this definition from the Money and Pension Service, because it enables us to break it down into tangible component parts. So the Money and Pension Service, they say that financial well-being is about feeling secure and in control. It's about making the most from your money day to day, dealing with the unexpected, and being on track for a healthy financial future. In short, financially resilient, confident, and empowered. So what I've done here on the screen is I've broken it down into security and choices now and in the future. So if we look at security, first of all, what that means is today it's making the most of your money day to day. So making sure you can afford things like your rent, your mortgage, your food, your needs, basically. So can you afford the insurance? Can you afford your broadband? All those things that you need to pay today. But in the future, what that means is that you've got some money put aside to deal with the unexpected. And then when we look at choices, those choices today which affect our financial well-being are things like the financial freedom to make choices. So can you afford to go out for dinner at the weekend? Can you afford to take the kids to, I don't know, to do something, pumpkin picking, in half term? Those extra little bits that make life enjoyable and, give you good well-being. Can you afford to do those today? And then again, looking towards the future, are you on track to meet your financial goals? Can you afford to go on holiday? Have you got money put aside for retirement? If you're looking to buy a house, have you got a deposit available? All of those things together, when they all come together, will give you, if you've got them all sorted, you've probably got pretty good financial well-being and financial health. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. Give us a thumbs up if you want. If anybody wants to give us a thumbs up. So what influences I can't close the chat, hang on a second. I can't see what's going on. So what influences our financial well-being? Well, there's lots of things that influence our financial well-being. So the first one, which you guys are probably most interested in, is our jobs. Our jobs influence our financial well-being. Our home, comparison, comparison is the thief of joy, but we are all so terrible at doing it or good at doing it. I don't know which way around it is, but comparing ourselves to other, it's natural to look out the window and look at the next door neighbour's car and think, wow, they're obviously doing well, or flip me, they've gone on holiday for the third time this year. They must be doing better than I am. When the reality is you have no idea what's actually going on behind those closed doors. Then we've got key stages of life, such as marrying, buying a house, or retiring. These are all like key financial stages in our life that, if you don't, buying a house is a really good example, actually. Unless you've done it before, you actually don't know what the process is, and who do you ask to help you with the process, and how do you know how much deposit you need without actually being able to speak to somebody? So, all of these things make us feel like we're not good enough, and will have an effect on our financial well-being. And then financial literacy has an effect. So 46% of adults report to have low knowledge, or 46% of adults report low knowledge about financial matters. So that's going to have a direct impact on our financial well-being. Also, if you've got poor financial literacy, you can't find out what information is credible or reliable, and then overwhelm kicks in. Things like external events will affect. I mentioned the war in Ukraine, the cost of living crisis, COVID. These have all had an impact on our finances and how we feel about money. And then our own background will have an important impact on our financial well-being. How we were brought up around money and how money was talked about in our homes, our own beliefs about things that have happened in the past with money, they will all have an impact on our financial well-being. But there is some research that shows different demographics and different people in society will have different views on money. For instance, is that in fact, I'll come on to that in a little bit later, actually. There's some information a bit later on that. But our confidence, how we feel about money, or how we feel about what we know about money, will have a big impact too. So 24% of the UK population have little or no confidence in managing their money. And then our income, and then lastly, obviously, our actual money will have an effect. So our income and any savings, or what money we've got in the bank, how we feel about money, whether we've got living paycheck to paycheck, that will have an impact on our financial well-being. But why now? So we've spoken about the cost of living crisis, and as I said, there's a lot of overwhelm that people feel about money and their lack of knowledge, and social media really doesn't help. Lucy and I were talking about TikTok just before we came onto the actual webinar. You only need to go onto TikTok, and there are hundreds of people that are talking about money and telling you what you should be doing with your money. Buy Bitcoin, don't buy Bitcoin, buy this, buy that. It can become really, really overwhelming, and there is a lot of information that is, again, if you Google what should I do with my surplus money at the end of the month, if you're lucky to have any, you'll get thousands of websites back. So social media has a big part to play in this. More people are struggling and living paycheck to paycheck, which we know, and employers are much more aware of the impact, which is why you're here today. We generally have better understanding of money and the impact on mental health, and how money is a real key driver towards people's mental health, and how they how that can really, really affect them. And also, we are more open to talking about money and money struggles, and again, I'll come on to that in a little bit. So money worries, they are at the forefront of your employees' minds, and it's not surprising when you look at these statistics from the Money and Pension Service. So these figures show the impact the cost of living crisis is having on our money. 22% of people have less than £100 in savings. 60% of adults are currently struggling to keep up with their bills. That is a huge amount. And 17% of people often borrow to buy food or to pay for their bills. And that puts them in what we would call debt crises. And remember, those on higher salaries, they're not immune to financial well-being challenges. These surveys are not restricted to people who are earning less than 30,000 or people who are earning minimum wage. It's 17% of all people are often borrowing to buy food and buy fuels, because when you earn more money, you tend to spend more money. So you would tend to have a bigger house, so therefore more higher bills. And we call it lifestyle creep, that the more money you earn, the more money you spend, basically. And then there's a big employer disconnect. Close Brothers did some research which suggests only 30% of employers thought that this was a major problem, when actually it affects 77% of their employees. So their most recent research shows that the biggest financial concern employees currently face is to do with keeping up with normal living costs. But this only comes in 8th on the corporate priority list. So it just shows what a big disconnect there is between employers and employees when we're talking about money. 3/4 of workplaces now have a wellbeing strategy in place, but only half of those have a financial well-being strategy in place. So if you go back to the beginning, the original slide, it's one of the 4 pillars. So if you've got a well-being strategy in place and you haven't got financial well-being, you're missing a big chunk out of your well-being strategy. So when employers underestimate the impact of financial stress, they miss opportunities to support their employees effectively. And financial well-being isn't just a nice to have. As I say, it's a core pillar of overall financial well-being. And it's essential for fostering productivity, engagement, and resilience, and bridging this disconnect and integrating financial well-being into your workplace well-being can create a much more supportive, motivated, and resilient workforce. So let's have a look at the impact of how poor financial well-being affects us at work. So the first one is absenteeism and productivity. 5 working days per employee per year are lost to people worrying about their finances. That's massive. And that equates to 626 million in lost productivity, which probably doesn't mean too much because that is an overall UK lost productivity. But it's estimated that 4% is added to payroll costs due to absenteeism caused by financial stress alone. So we're talking about the budget is increasing costs. If you can save some of that money by reducing the absenteeism caused by financial stress, you're going a long way to being able to offset some of those new costs. And also, employees who are suffering with financial stress are twice as likely to look for another job. So when you add that to the fact that 77% of employees report they have experienced financial stress and worry over the last 12 months, your 77% of your employees are basically considering looking for, well, it's not quite like that, but are twice as likely to look for another job as they would be normally. So is anybody surprised by any of those figures? Anybody want to pop anything in the chat?
I definitely am. I think it was the figure before that really struck me on the previous slide.
The impact and cost of 4% being added to payroll.
Yeah. And the absenteeism and presenteeism as a result of all of that. Hadn't really ever connected it quite like that before.
There's lots and lots of research. So if anybody is interested in find out where all of these figures come from, there's quite a lot of information on the CIPD website, and a lot of my information comes from there, or the Money and Pension Service. But there, there's heaps of research out there. So if you want to contact me and ask me about it, then feel free. So how can you support people's financial well-being? So the role of the employer has evolved over time. Once employer, I've got to get this around the right way, haven't I? Once employers were solely responsible for providing wages in exchange for labour. So it was a very transactional relationship. but today's businesses are expected to support the broader well-being of their employees. So things like job satisfaction, work-life balance, overall well-being. Employees expect to have safe, flexible and inclusive workplaces. And this shift reflects the changing nature of work, where job satisfaction, work-life balance and personal well-being are key factors in an employee's decision to stay with an employer longer term. So that relationship has really, really changed. But also, financial well-being is actually something your employees want. Taking an interest in employees' financial well-being is a reflection of ethical leadership. It acknowledges that employees are human beings with challenges outside of work that can affect their job performance, and supporting financial health demonstrates compassion, responsibility, and fostering a workplace culture based on trust and care. So over 2/3 of UK employees want more support with their finances. That's from the Money and Pension Service. But what's interesting is 33% of employers report there has been a rise in demand from employees for financial wellbeing support, but yet still only 18% of organisations have an employee financial wellbeing policy in place. So if you're looking to attract top talent and you know that's something that people want, if you've got a financial wellbeing strategy in place, you're doing really well in the marketplace. And it's a good opportunity to be able to say, look, we really do care about our employees. So employees are uniquely positioned to understand their people's individual financial needs and goals, and that you can position yourself as a trusted source. So we were talking earlier about the overwhelm. Where do you go? What do you look at? You guys can actually really set yourself out to say, look, we are the trusted resource. You need to, stay with us, be loyal with us. We will help you, support you with your finances, and help you to navigate some of that overwhelm. And as we've seen, the likely outcome of the budget last week is there's going to be less money for pay rises and bonuses, and therefore offering financial wellbeing could be a cost-effective alternative. So, like, for instance, if you can't afford to give more money to your employees, you can help people to manage what they have better and be able to make it last longer. So, how do you set about creating a financial wellbeing strategy? Well, there are 3 core elements. The first element is payment of at least a fair and livable wage, which the increase to minimum wage will help towards that. Support for in-work progression. So that again is something that is cultural more than anything, is like make sure that there's support for people to have in-work progression. And then the last tier is the financial wellbeing, education and support. And obviously that's where I can come in. Or Stribe can help you to identify those areas. So what kind of things do we include? This is a very busy slide, so forgive me, but it just kind of captures what we would class to be financial products and what's in the ecosystem. So you've got your traditional financial wellbeing products, your workplace pensions, your company car and travel schemes, loans for maybe travel, train fares, etc. Savings and investment schemes, some cases childcare, and your healthcare and insurance, so your death in service, your sick pay, and all of those kind of traditional financial wellbeing services, which you may not actually consider to be part of financial wellbeing, but they all are ultimately. And then you've got some other solutions. So things like having a platform where you may have content and courses that people can access, or an app where there is information about financial wellbeing. You may be able to offer one-off gestures of goodwill. You may have a reward and discount platform. My husband has got a discount platform. We always use it for when we buy something big. This year alone, we've saved over £200. And actually, we're trying to get better at doing it on a more regular basis for our weekly shopping, because I think we can save something like 4 or 5% off of our weekly shopping bill, which is great. Salary advance, EAPs, they've got quite a bad name, but they can be, if utilized well, they can help with your financial well-being and help with the worries and the anxiety and the mental health issues that come from money, and then signpost into relevant and credible resources. So they're kind of like the other options that you may have available. And then we've got all the human options that you could possibly have. So things like financial coaching, training, masterclasses, workshops, webinars like today, training people to be money champions. You've all got mental health first aiders. You could also upskill them to be able to talk about money, financial advice and mortgage advice. So some companies offer, a link up to a financial advisor or a mortgage advisor, and then other external experts and partners to help you to provide this. So what's HR's role in supporting financial well-being, and why HR? So financial wellness is inherently tied to employee well-being and organisational performance, making it a critical issue for HR. And by taking responsibility for financial wellness, HR can create a supportive work environment that benefits both the employees and the organisation as a whole. And you guys as HR are uniquely positioned to understand people's needs. You tend to be cultural leaders within the business. You're in charge of designing, and forgive me for paraphrasing because it may not be exactly what you all do or what you're responsible for, but they tend to be, you tend to be in charge of things like designing compensation and benefits package, or at least having a say in what should go into those. You oversee retention and talent acquisition. You're responsible for performance management, creating business policies, so things like flexible pay and emergency loans and flexible working. All of these things tie back into financial well-being. And then you're obviously more than likely also developing well-being and engagement strategies. You will have some L&D responsibilities as well attached with all of this. In fact, you guys are just the heart and soul of the businesses, aren't you? You're going to be needing to change to respond to economic and social changes, and ultimately in charge of conflict resolution. So all of the things that we mentioned about absenteeism, presenteeism, loss of productivity, they all firmly fall, and costs and all of those kind of retention, talent acquisition, they all firmly land on your lap. And so if you can do something to be able to pull all of that together, then that's going to help all aspects of your role. So what's within the HR remit? So taking an interest in employees' financial well-being is a reflection of ethical leadership and supports corporate social responsibilities, whilst addressing one of the main causes of poor mental health. So it acknowledges that employees are human beings with challenges outside of work that can affect their job performance. One of the things, and I think Lucy mentioned it to me the first time we spoke, is that people are concerned about the boundaries. Like, why should an employer help an employee with their finances? Is that not overstepping the mark? But actually, addressing financial well-being doesn't overstep the boundaries. Rather, it creates a mutually beneficial relationship. As I said, it's a bit of a win-win situation, really. It's like if somebody feels supported and you're helping them with their struggles, they become more loyal and they're more likely to stay with you rather than looking for another job. And, as we said about the talent acquisition as well. So, but not only are you helping them manage their financial challenges, HR is enhancing employees' quality of life. Not only is HR enhancing employees' quality of life, but improving organisational performance. So it's not about paternalism, it's about recognising that there's a practical connection between an employee's financial health and their ability to contribute effectively at work. So supporting financial well-being is a strategic investment both in people and the success of the business. So what is within your remit then? So you can look at things like financial education and resources. We saw that on some of the solutions that are available. There are apps out there. You can have a platform. You can provide knowledge, documents and resources. You can look at the employee benefits and financial perks and design an offering that supports financial well-being. Or implementing flexible pay options, These are all things that are really within HR's remit. You can create financial wellbeing policies and develop workplace policies that support overall wellbeing, including mental and physical health, as we mentioned earlier. You're likely to be, you can access confidential financial counselling services and promote those within your organisation. You also can look at training senior leaders, managers, and as I say, mental health first aiders, and all of those kind of things are well within your remit. Surveying and assessing financial wellbeing needs, and driving the financial wellbeing initiatives. And lastly, creating an open culture about money. Well, actually, let's go further than that. You probably need to create an open culture, full stop, to be able to talk about money. So where do you draw the line? So what you can't do is you can't provide personal financial advice. You can't manage employees' personal finances for them. You can't track or request detailed financial information. So you can't ask people to tell you, how much debt they've actually got, and have that attached to their name. You can't impose financial choices on employees, and you can't guarantee financial outcomes. So HR should not promise or imply that participation in financial wellbeing initiatives will lead to specific financial outcomes, such as debt elimination or significant savings or growth. Anything that you provide needs to be framed as supportive and not guaranteed solutions. So HR's role is to enable access to financial wellbeing resources and foster a supportive environment that empowers employees to take control of their finances. By focusing on resources, education and support, HR can promote financial wellbeing without overstepping into areas that could breach privacy or assume liability for employers' financial decisions. So hopefully that gives you a bit of context around that. Again, it's a little bit like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. So you can't force anything upon them. But one thing to just mention is that when you're having conversations around money and you're setting up initiatives, just be mindful that you're offering guidance and signposting to options available, leading the horse to water, but not telling them to drink. There's two distinct ways that we can talk about money. One is advice and one is guidance. When I was an advisor, I would go and sit down with people. I would read for like two hours and take details of all of their financial situation. I would go away, I would make formal recommendations. I would probably send a report about that thick back to them as to why I've recommended what I've recommended. That is clearly advice, and that is what you need to be steering away from. What we need to be looking at is guidance. So what's the difference? So guidance is a much broader term, and it includes more general information about finances. And there is no problem with anybody giving guidance, and any organisation can offer guidance including financial advisors and financial financial services firms. But what's the difference? And it purely is a language thing. So if you find yourself saying to people, or writing on a blog, or look at these benefits, you should be using your discount scheme because it will save you money. That is on the advice side. Or have you considered going to the bank? I'm just trying to think of a bank. Let's make something up completely. Have you considered going to Santander because they're offering 15% on their current account? That's much more guidance-y. But if you told somebody the best interest rate is at Santander, you should transfer your banking to them. There is a really big difference. So there is no problem talking about these things. There is no problem discussing them, as long as you are mindful about the way that you are talking about them and offering people the options so that they're more aware of them and more educated and be able to make an informed decision. So what are 5 steps to get you started with financial wellbeing? So the first step is to understand the needs of your employees, and you can do that through data collection, surveys, focus groups, stories, asking people to share experiences, or asking people what they actually want. The second thing is to review what you already have in place. We've already talked about, you've probably got quite a considerable amount of information or benefits that are available to people that you could leverage and utilize within a financial well-being strategy. Then you need to have a look at what gaps you've got and identify those gaps and develop your strategy at that point. But you must consider different demographics. There's no point doing a whole load of work at retirement options if your employees are all young people looking to get onto the housing ladder. That's not gonna help, is it? So you need to consider different demographics and the different needs of those demographics. You need to get buy-in from senior leadership, and I'll speak about that in a second in a bit more detail. And then finally, roll out your plan. And this final step will enable you to launch the programme, and then you need to evaluate its effectiveness. So I'm guessing surveys will come into that. Share the information, share the feedback, and don't be afraid to adapt and change your strategy. It doesn't matter if something doesn't work or it doesn't get any engagement. You can always easily change it to something else. So let's have a quick look at the role of employee surveys. So one question I'm often asked is, where do I start with financial well-being? And I would always answer by saying, asking your employers what they want and what they need, and will help you to define the problem. And financial well-being surveys play a crucial role in understanding and enhancing employee financial health by providing data-driven insights that can inform effective support strategies. And because we're not always open about talking about money, these employee surveys are a great option to achieve these insights due to their confidentiality. So you do have to use Stribe, obviously, but you don't have to use somebody like Stribe. You can use internal, like Slack, anonymous type form type surveys. Whatever works for your organization, you can find out anonymously, what struggles people are having, where they're struggling within their finances, to be able to tailor then your support to those, and you'll get better engagement that way. So the role really of employee surveys is you can assess financial health and needs of your employees. You can use it to guide wellbeing initiatives, track the progress and impact that your strategies are having, enhance employee engagement, because if they feel that they're being asked about it and are being asked for feedback, you're more likely to get people involved to help to want to develop the strategy, and they can support your business objectives. Lucy, have you got anything to add to that?
Thank you for the shout out. Obviously, we would love for people to choose us, but there are lots of different options out there as well. And I think the main thing is just to tie back to something that Abby was saying about demographics. So one thing we are always really conscious of is that you are able to maintain anonymity with your surveys. That's key to making sure that you're getting detailed feedback from your employees. And when it comes to something like financial well-being, you need that detailed feedback to really be able to create change that matters for employees. But layered on top of that, it's a really tricky thing to achieve anonymity whilst also getting the demographic data you need to be able to put in place solutions that really reflect the stage that your employees are at, either in their life cycle, either in their careers, and that is what information you need to really be able to tailor those. So any kind of specialized survey software will always support you to do that. We have a number of different ways that we promote anonymity whilst also allowing you to get that demographic data. So it's just something to keep in mind if you are at the start of that survey journey for particularly for financial well-being.
Thank you. So breaking the silence, why money conversations are taboo. So Lucy will quickly put up a poll. How comfortable are you with conversations about money, basically? So how comfortable are you with initiating or facilitating conversations about money with colleagues or employees? Whilst you're all answering that, I'll move on to I'm going back, sorry, because for a recent webinar I did, this is really interesting. For a recent webinar I did, the host that I was doing it for actually posed the question on a poll on LinkedIn before the webinar, asking, are you more likely to talk about your money or your sex life? I wasn't quite that brave to do that as a poll today, but I did some research after that, and I found that in the UK, we are 7 times more likely to tell a stranger how many sexual partners we've had, whether we've had an affair, and whether they've ever contacted an STD, than I have to chat about our income. It's an incredible stat. But what actually drives this this concern, not wanting to talk about money? So there are a number of reasons, and so there's the stigma of money conversations and our own backgrounds, and as I mentioned earlier, that our backgrounds have a real impact on our financial well-being. It wasn't that long ago you would hear a phrase like, talking about money is vulgar, or how many times have we said to our children, I am guilty of this one, which is why I always put it in here, don't put money in your mouth, it's dirty. Right from a very, very young age, we're told, money is not good. And in many cultures, talking about money is considered to be seen as impolite or inappropriate. We also have a fear of judgment. So people worry that they'll be judged for their financial situation, whether they have too little or too much in some cases. And this fear of judgment tends to lead to avoidance. And then there's emotional and psychological connections. So money brings up uncomfortable emotions, our previous experiences, and money discussions often lead to comparisons, which can create a feeling of inadequacy or or I can't say, sorry.
Superiority.
Thank you. Which obviously brings up feelings of discomfort. And we also feel like we're uninformed. So many people feel unprepared or uneducated about financial topics, which leads to discomfort. And if someone feels they lack knowledge, they will probably avoid trying to have those conversations in case it makes them look ignorant. There is a lack of normalizations. There aren't enough open, constructive conversations about money in public life or the media. A really good example of that, I've been watching a terrible program called Married at First Sight, which is really interesting. Going back to my earlier point about talking about our sex life, they talk about their sex lives constantly on this program, absolutely, but there's hardly any mention of what job they're going to be doing or the job they do outside of the program, what their income is, how they're going to support each other. It just doesn't exist in very, very small amount of people actually talk about it in this program, but yet we probably all know way too much about what they're up to in the bedroom. So really, there is a real lack of normalization in the public domain. However, that is changing, and it is changing rapidly, and the pandemic and the cost of living crisis have really put that onto really made us much more aware of issues and challenges that people are having financially, and it's made it much more normal. In fact, I've got a newspaper here, the Mirror. There's a big double page spread about the money taboo and how we're much more open about talking about money now. Things are changing, and they're changing rapidly. And lastly, it's not seen as relevant, especially in the workplace. So we touched upon that earlier about the boundaries and whether it's something that employees should get involved in, and completely underestimate the impact that money worries are having on their employees. So how can we normalize those conversations? So you've got to embed financial well-being into the bedrock of your organization. And actually, as we said, it probably goes further than that. Your whole culture needs to be open and supportive. And you need to get buy-in from senior leadership. They are the people who should be setting the cultural and strategic direction for support. Addressing money challenges within an organisation requires sensitivity, confidentiality, and a supportive environment. And I'm going to go through some strategies to foster open communication or open conversations about money now. So The first one is to create a culture, a supportive culture, so people feel safe discussing financial matters without fear of judgment or embarrassment. You need your leaders to lead by example, and they should openly discuss financial wellness and its importance to the business. And when managers and senior staff share experiences or tips relating to managing finances, it sets the tone for others to engage and join in the conversation. Having things like an open door policy where employees feel comfortable approaching HR or managers with their financial concerns is a really good first step. And then normalise the conversation, encourage discussions about financial wellness as part of overall wellbeing. Use your company communications. I mentioned Slack, or, if you've got a newsletter, talk about the importance of financial health and, common topics that people want to, need help and support with. People feel less isolated when other people are talking about similar things. I've said about utilising communication channels. Awareness campaigns, I'll touch upon that again in a minute, but you can conduct your own awareness campaigns during relevant times to raise awareness and available resources. Anonymous surveys and feedbacks are a great tool to utilise to help promote this open culture about money. Because you can then ask people, what topics would you like support with? What is it that you feel that you're, lacking with regards to your finances, that, you may be able to help. You could go one step further and include friendly challenges like savings goals or no spend weeks, like encouraging employees to participate in positive financial behaviours as a group. Like everybody bring their lunch to work for this week. None of us are going to go out for lunch. Those kind of things. Make it fun, make it interesting. Offer financial wellbeing services and provide so things like workshops and seminars are a really great way of helping people. Popular topics like budgeting, debt management, savings and investing. And if you've done the work ahead of time with a survey from Stribe, you'll know sort of what the common themes are. We'll get much more engagement for those kind of things. Providing access to support services like financial guidance services, and I mentioned the EAPs, utilising them to their full potential, to help you with this. And then lastly, train people in your organisation to support employees with their financial health. Be that payroll, because they're the people who are getting the phone calls to say, I can't afford, can you give me some more money? I need some help. I can't get to the end of the month. I can't afford to get to work, or senior leadership, mental health first aiders, or your managers to be able to hold those conversations with people and be able to recognise financial stress and actually, deal with it in the moment rather than it becoming a bigger issue. And the last thing you could do is obviously train money champions, similar to mental health first aiders, but people who are dedicated to supporting their colleagues with their finances. So I mentioned about awareness weeks, and as Lucy said, this week is Talk Money Week. So one way to start talking about money more is using initiatives like Pension Awareness Week, for instance, or Talk Money Week as it's this week. There are various different awareness weeks throughout the year, or you can create your own. I worked with a company who they had mental health first aiders, they had money champions, and they would do like bi-monthly drives to be able to like get, re-educate people that they were there, that and they would do things like get a pizza van or a coffee van or something like that to just engage with people. So you can do it yourself, or you can utilize things like Talk Money Week, which gives us an opportunity to encourage more open conversations about money. So this year's theme is do one thing. So maybe have a think about one thing you can do this week for Talk Money Week. So you could maybe initiate a conversation about financial well-being within your organisation. Perhaps looking at ways to leverage what you've already got and maybe remind people about some of the discounts that are available to them, for instance, or check their pension statements. Ask for feedback on current programmes. Perhaps send out an anonymous survey or suggest a new initiative. So there's some ideas there of things that you can do and get involved in with Talk Money Week straight away.
Gareth has just shared a really good example of some work they've been doing recently as well. I think it's Gareth from Ladder Store. So he's just said that they've been fortunate enough to be able to provide 2 free sessions to everyone with a financial advisor, and have held a workshop around the pillars of spend, save, borrow, and plan. And they feel that that's really helped them with their kind of openness, which is amazing to hear. Well done.
That's absolutely fantastic. Yeah, that's a really, really good initiative. So well done. So what are the benefits of financial well-being and having a more open culture around money? So it improves your overall well-being strategy and complements it, works together. You'll alleviate financial stress and anxiety within your workforce. It will improve mental health. As I said, money is one of the major contributors to poor mental health. It will help build a trusting workplace culture, boost productivity, reduction in sick days, absenteeism and presenteeism, increase employee engagement. So if you're talking about your benefits as part of your well-being strategy, your financial well-being strategy, you will have more engagement with those. Do people know that you've got a discount scheme, or how to access it, or what benefits it is? Improves retention and talent acquisition. And there's one PwC reported, they did a survey, and 73% of people that they surveyed reported being more attracted to an employer that cares about their financial well-being than one that doesn't. 73%. So if you think only 18% of organizations have got a financial well-being policy in place, you potentially are putting yourself out there as a market leader. It also improves financial literacy of your employees, which is always, builds confidence, happier, healthier employees, encourages inclusivity, and improves organizational performance and aligns with your CSR goals, which again is something that people are really looking at harder nowadays. And by fostering open discussions about financial well-being, companies show they're committed to employee welfare, which supports their CSR goals and improves their reputation. So it can only be a win-win situation. And having a financial well-being strategy in place and having better and open conversations about money creates a ripple effect. So, it helps alleviate personal financial struggles, but also they'll be able to go and talk to their family, who'll be able to go and talk to their family and improve, create a ripple effect, that will be seen in more than your organization. So what's next? Pop in the comments one action, if you're happy to, one action that you'll be taking following today's webinar. It can be just something as simple as conducting a survey, or sending out some information on a putting it into the newsletter this month, or thinking about the strategies that you can put in place. Is anybody willing to share?
Everyone's very quiet today.
No, it doesn't matter.
I think for us, we are definitely going to be looking at, on reflection, we have a lot of support, but I think there's things that we could do just to remind colleagues to access those, and make it easier for them to access it. I know for a fact we've got things like our cash plan, our health cash plan, that gives them a little bit of support with things like dental bills and things like that, but we don't have a centralized place where they can access the information they need to then claim that back. So I think just having a little look at access and awareness is one thing that I'll be doing after this.
Brilliant. Thank you, Lucy. So if anybody is interested in further support, reach out to either Lucy or myself. I can help with the training. I've got a course coming up, Practical Ways to Support Your Team with Money Worries. That's just a short 90-minute quick fire workshop, really, to provide some credible resources that you can signpost people to, so it's not too onerous. If financial education webinars, coaching skill workshops, helping managers to actually build those skills to be able to have those conversations in the first place. There's something that you probably need, along with financial wellbeing workshops. I can offer financial coaching, and looking at health audits and employee financial wellbeing surveys. And obviously Stribe can support alongside with any of those. So apologies, I've overrun slightly, but what we've covered today is quite considerable. So we've looked at the key takeaways from the budget, we've looked at what financial wellbeing is and the impact it has in the workplace, and we've looked at the role HR has in supporting employee financial wellbeing. We've looked at the reasons why money conversations are often seen as taboo and how we can create an open culture about money. And we've had a look at the role that financial wellbeing surveys have in identifying what your employees need, and looked at some actionable steps you could probably take, straight after this. Hopefully one thing is the Talk Money Week is a really good opportunity, and I'll make sure the link to Talk Money Week is included in the email that comes out to you afterwards, so you can get involved. There's lots of ideas on there, how you can start conversations, and all sorts of different things are on there. So thank you for your time. There's one last poll, if you don't mind.
It's launched it now, and I will share the results of the last one as well. Oh, I can't do that until the other poll ends. Zoom does not let me, but thank you so much, Abby. We are just waiting for those to come in. Yes, people on the whole are feeling more confident. So good job there. That's really lovely to see.
Anybody got any questions whilst
I haven't seen any come through, but I do have one that we received just ahead of the webinar from someone that wouldn't be able to make it. So whilst folk are thinking about any final questions, I do just have one that is, do you have, and I know we've covered a little bit of this, but just so we have made sure we've answered this question for the non-attendee, do you have any advice on how to support, retain and engage staff when pay rises simply aren't an option?
Yeah, I think this is really interesting, isn't it? Because salary isn't always the answer. First of all, employers are going through a cost of living crisis as well, and that's only going to get worse in the next few months or so. I think it's this whole openness, isn't it? Is that if people understand why and the pressures that are on an employer, and we're all open and honest and say, do you know what? We can't afford to, but hang on a second. We realise that that's not great. We realise that you're struggling. Here's some support, that we can offer you to be able to help see you through. I mean, for instance, just like a webinar or something on how to manage, navigate through the cost of living crisis. And we did lots of that, or I did lots of that within, during the cost of living crisis. People are going to be more receptive to it and say, oh, they're not just trying not to give us a pay rise. But, if we're all open and honest, and as I say, it's a cultural thing, and it comes from the top, and it has to come from the senior leadership, and, to be open and honest and say, the government, they may have said to you that they're not going to raise taxes in your pocket, but they've raised our taxes, which means that we've got less money. People will be more open to that, and it's about creating that culture around the conversation, so people know that they understand where you're coming from.
No, that's really good to hear. And I think we had a webinar a few webinars ago now where we talked about the relationship between the organization and the employee moving away from being very parent and child to being where it's like we can't share these things, and we feel like we need to protect employees from certain things, and we can't show weakness or vulnerability, and we just have to be very, very kind of prim and proper and professional. Whereas now I think vulnerability and honesty are coming into those, and it's a much more even relationship where I think managers and senior leaders are kind of respecting that employees should have that information, and it's for the best of the organization that we're open and honest with people about.
I think as well, as we said, the more money giving people more money doesn't necessarily help their financial well-being either. And again, that's another education piece. It's got to be handled right, but actually with lifestyle creep, there will be directors who are suffering with poor financial health and poor financial well-being and anxiety around that. It's just different to, somebody who's on a minimum wage, for instance, and who's struggling to get to work. But, it's not isolated to one demographic of your employees. And so just giving somebody a pay rise doesn't necessarily help them learn to deal with their money, manage their money, and maybe give them some more life skills for, and there's a lot of, I've noticed recently, there's quite a lot of focus on early careers training as well, and this can all form part of that. Like if you give people a recent webinar I've been involved in, somebody like graduates who are suddenly gone from nothing to huge salaries, but giving them those money skills to be able to manage those salaries, and just simple things like you actually have to register with the inland revenue when you earn this amount of money. People don't know what they don't know, and so it's really a good practice to try and support. So thinking about all of those kind of things and supporting people with their finances.
One final question from me, and then I think we will finish up. If there was just one change you could tell organizations to make, what would it be? It's a big question.
I think this is a bit bigger than necessarily finances per se, but I think it's training your leaders. Quite often managers and leaders and senior leaders are all just promoted because they're good at their jobs, but they don't necessarily have those coaching skills or those skills to be able to have those sensitive conversations well. So I think that would be a really good foundation. And then you can start adding like skills to be able to support people with their finances and support people, with other aspects of their overall well-being, such as mental health and all of those kind of things. So actually that would be probably what I would change, is that, when we're promoting people and when we're putting these people into these positions, that they actually have the skills to be able to do that. And obviously promoting open conversations about money within your organisation.
Yeah, the managers really are the key that unlocks so much for organizations. We've seen that time and time again as well. Thank you so much, Abby, and a huge thank you to everyone that joined us today. Thank you so much for your participation in the polls and things like that. We will be sending a follow-up email shortly that will include a link to the webinar recording and additional resources, some of the ones that Abby's mentioned, to help you take these things forward. We'll also share Abby's LinkedIn, so if you are interested in working with her on any of the kind of ideas that she shared, maybe taking her up on some workshops and things like that, please do get in touch with her. One quick favor as well, if you found anything valuable today, please do share your takeaways on social media. We always love to see those insights and what sparks new conversations. It also really helps us spread the word to more workplaces about the good work that both Abby's doing and Stribe are doing too. So again, thank you so much for being here. We look forward to seeing you at our next webinar, and we will speak to you very soon. Thank you again, Abby.
Take care, won't you? Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.